Hello, this is Morale Bernard with the continuation of the story, Wuthering Heights. Last words were, what in the name of all that feels has he to do with books when I am dying? So that's Catherine. So please subscribe and please share, subscribe to the channel and share these videos, much appreciated. So continuation of the story of Wuthering Heights. She could not bear the notion which I had put into her head of Mr. Linton's philosophical resignation. Tossing about, she increased her feverish bewilderment to madness and tore the pillow with her teeth. Then raising herself up, all burning, desired that I would open the window. We were in the middle of winter. The wind blew strong from the northeast, and I objected. Both the expressions flitting over her face and the changes of her moods began to alarm me terribly, and brought to my recollection her former illness and the doctor's injunction that she should not be crossed. A minute previously, she was violent. Now, supported on one arm and not noticing my refusal to obey her, she seemed to find childish diversion in pulling the feathers from the rents she had just made and ranging them on the sheet according to their different species. Her mind had strayed to other associations. "That's turkeys," she murmured to herself. "And this is a wild ducks. And this is a pigeons. Ah, they put pigeons' feathers in the pillars. No wonder I couldn't die. Let me take care to throw it on the floor when I lie down. And here is a moorcock's. And this, I should know it among 1,000. It's a lapwings. Bonny bird wheeling over our heads in the middle of the moor. It wanted to get to its nest, for the clouds had touched the swells, and it felt rain coming. This feather was picked up from the heath. The bird was not shot. We saw its nest in the winter full of little skeletons. Heathcliff set a trap over it, and the old ones dared not come. I made him promise he'd never shoot a lapwing after that, and he didn't. Yes, here are more. Did he shoot my lapwings? Nellie? Are they red, any of them? Let me look. Give over with that baby work, I interrupted, dragging the pillow away and turning the holes towards the mattress, for she was removing its contents by handfuls. Lie down and shut your eyes. You're wondering. There's a mess. The down is flying about like snow. I went here and there collecting it. I see in you, Nellie, she continued dreamily, an aged woman who have grey hair and bent shoulders. This bed is the fairy cave on the Pennystone Crags, and you are gathering elf bolts to hurt our heifers, pretending, while I'm near, that they are only locks of wool. That's what you'll come to 50 years hence. I know you are not so now. I'm not wondering. You're mistaken. Or else I should believe you were that withered hag, and I should think I was on the Pennystone Crags. And I'm conscious it's night, and there are 2 candles on the table making the black press shine like jet. The black press, where is that? I asked. You are talking in your sleep. It's against the wall, as it always is, she replied. It does appear odd. I see a face in it. There's no press in the room, and never was, said I, resuming my seat and looping up the curtain that I might watch her. Don't you see that face? she inquired, gazing earnestly at the mirror. And say what I could, I was incapable of making her comprehend it to be her own, so I rose and covered it with a shawl. It's behind there still, she pursued anxiously. And it stirred. Who is it? I hope it will not come out when you are gone. Oh, Nelly, the room is haunted. I'm afraid of being alone. I took her hand in mine and bid her be composed, for a succession of shudders convulsed her frame, and she would keep straining her gaze towards the glass. There's nobody there, I insisted. It was yourself, Mrs. Linton. You knew it a while since. Myself? She gasped. And the clock is striking 12. It's true, then. That's dreadful. Her fingers clutched the clothes and gathered them over her eyes. I attempted to steal to the door with an intention of calling her husband, but I was summoned back by a piercing shriek. The shawl had dropped from the frame. Why, what is the matter? Cried I. Who is coward now? Wake up. That is the glass, the mirror, Mrs. Linton, and you see yourself in it, and there am I too by your side. Trembling and bewildered, she held me fast, but the horror gradually passed from her countenance. Its paleness gave place to a glow of shame. Oh dear, I thought I was at home, she sighed. I thought I was lying in my chamber at Wuthering Heights. Because I'm weak, my brain got confused, and I screamed unconsciously. Don't say anything, but stay with me. I dread sleeping. My dreams appall me. A sound sleep would do you good, ma'am, I answered. And I hope the suffering will prevent your trying starving again. Oh, if I were but in my own bed in the old house, she went on bitterly, wringing her hands. And that wind sounding in the firs by the lattice, don't let me feel it. It comes straight down the moor. Do let me have one breath. To pacify her, I held the casement ajar a few seconds. A cold blast rushed through. I closed it and returned to my post. She lay still now, her face bathed in tears. Exhaustion of body had entirely subdued her spirit. Our fiery Catherine was no better than a wailing child. How long is it since I shut myself in here? She asked, suddenly reviving. It was Monday evening, I replied, and this is Thursday night, or rather Friday morning at present. What, of the same week? She exclaimed. Only that brief time? Long enough to live on nothing but cold water and ill temper, observed I. Well, it seems a weary number of hours, she muttered doubtfully. It must be more. I remember being in the parlour after they had quarrelled, and Edgar being cruelly provoking, and me running into this room desperate. As soon as ever I had barred the door, utter blackness overwhelmed me, and I fell on the floor. I couldn't explain to Edgar how certain I felt of having a fit, or going raging mad if he persisted in teasing me. I had no command of tongue or brain, and he did not guess my agony, perhaps. It barely left me sense to try to escape from him and his voice. Before I recovered sufficiently to see and hear, it began to be dawn, and Nelly, I tell you what I thought, and what has kept recurring and recurring till I feared for my reason. I thought as I lay there, with my head against that table leg and my eyes dimly discerning the grey square of the window, that I was enclosed in the oak-panelled bed at home, and my heart ached with some great grief which, just waking, I could not recollect. I pondered and worried myself to discover what it could be, and most strange, the whole last 7 years of my life grew a blank. I did not recall that they had been at all. I was a child. My father was just buried, and my misery arose from the separation that Hindley had ordered between me and Heathcliff. I was laid alone for the first time, and rousing from a dismal doze after a night of weeping, I lifted my hand to push the panels aside. It struck the tabletop. I swept it along the carpet, and then memory burst in. My late anguish was swallowed in a paroxysm of despair. I cannot say why I felt so wildly wretched. It must have been temporary derangement, for there is scarcely cause. But supposing at 12 years old I had been wrenched from the heights and every early association, and my all in all, as Heathcliff was at that time, had been converted as a stroke into Mrs. Linton, the lady of Thrusgrove Grange, and the wife of a stranger, an exile, and outcast, thenceforth, from what had been my world. You may fancy a glimpse of the abyss where I grovelled. Shake your head as you will, Nelly, you have helped to unsettle me. You should have spoken to Edgar, indeed you should, and compel him to leave me quiet. Oh, I'm burning. I wish I were out of doors. I wish I were a girl again, half savage and hardy and free, and laughing at injuries, not maddening under them. Why am I so changed? Why does my blood rush into a hell of tumult at a few words? I'm sure I should be myself were I once among the heather on those hills. Open the window again wide. Fasten it open. Quick! Why don't you move? Because I won't give you your death of cold, I answered. You won't give me a chance of life, you mean, she said sullenly. However, I'm not helpless yet. I'll open it myself. And sliding from the bed before I could hinder her, she crossed the room, walking very uncertainly, threw it back and bent out, careless of the frosty air that cut about her shoulders as keen as a knife. I entreated and finally attempted to force her to retire, but I soon found her delirious strength much surpassed mine. She was delirious. I became convinced by her subsequent actions and ravings. There was no moon, and everything beneath lay in misty darkness, not a light gleam from any house, far or near. All had been extinguished long ago, and those at Wuthering Heights were never visible. Still, she asserted, she caught their shining. Look, she cried easily, that's my room with a candle in it, and the tree swaying before it, and the other candle is in Joseph's garret. Joseph sits up late, doesn't he? He's waiting till I come home, that he may lock the gate. Well, he'll wait a while yet. It's a rough journey, and a sad heart to travel it, and we must pass by Gimmerton Kirk to go that journey. We braved its ghost often together, and dared each other to stand among the graves and ask them to come. But Heathcliff, if I dare you now, will you venture? If you do, I'll keep you. I'll not lie there by myself. They may bury me 12 feet deep and throw the church down over me, but I won't rest till you are with me. I never will. She paused and resumed with a strained smile. He's considering. He'd rather I come to him. Find a way, then, not through that kirkyard. You are slow. Be content. You always followed me. Perceiving it vain to argue against her insanity, I was planning how I could read something to wrap about her without quitting my hold of herself, for I could not trust her alone by the gaping lattice, when, to my consternation, I heard the rattle of the door handle, and Mr. Linton entered. He had only then come from the library, and in passing through the lobby had noticed our talking and been attracted by curiosity, or fear, to examine what it signified at that late hour. "Oh, sir," I cried, checking the exclamation risen to my lips at the sight which meant him and the bleak atmosphere of the chamber. "My poor mistress is ill, and she quite masters me. I cannot manage her at all. Pray, come and persuade her to go to bed. Forget your anger, for she's hard to guide any way but her own." "Catherine ill?" he said, hastening to us. "Shut the window, Ellen. Catherine, why?" He was silent. The haggardness of Mrs. Linton's appearance smote him speechless, and he could only glance from her to me in horrified astonishment. "She's been fretting here," I continued, "and eating scarcely anything, and never complaining. She would admit none of us till this evening, and so we couldn't inform you of her state, as we were not aware of it ourselves. But it is nothing." I felt I uttered my explanation awkwardly. The master frowned. "It is nothing, is it, Ellen Dean?" he said sternly. "You shall account more clearly for keeping me ignorant of this." And he took his wife in his arms and looked at her with anguish. At first she gave him no glance of recognition. He was invisible to her abstracted gaze. The delirium was not fixed, however. Having weaned her eyes from contemplating the outer darkness, by degrees she centered her attention on him, and discovered who it was that held her. "Ah, you are come, are you, Edgar Linton?" she said, with angry animation. "You are one of those things that are ever found when least wanted, and when you are wanted, never. I suppose we shall have plenty of lamentations now. I see we shall, but they can't keep me from my narrow home out yonder, my resting place, where I'm bound before spring is over. There it is, not among the Lintons, mind, under the chapel roof, but in the open air with a headstone. And you may please yourself whether you go to them or come to me." "Catherine, what have you done?" commenced the master. "Am I nothing to you any more? Do you love that wretch Heath—" "Hush!" cried Mrs. Linton. "Hush, this moment. You mention that name, and I end the matter instantly by a sprig from the window. What you touch at present you may have, but my soul will be on that hilltop before you lay hands on me again. I don't want you, Edgar. I'm past wanting you. Return to your books. I'm glad you possess a consultation, for all you had in me is gone." "Her mind wanders, sir," I interposed. "She has been talking nonsense the whole evening, but let her have quiet and proper attendance, and she'll rally. Hereafter, we must be cautious how we vex her." "I desire no further advice from you," answered Mr. Linton. "You knew your mistress's nature, and you encouraged me to harass her, and not to give me one hint of how she has been these 3 days. It was heartless. Months of sickness could not cause such a change." I began to defend myself, thinking it too bad to be blamed for another wicked waywardness. I knew Mrs. Linton's nature to be headstrong and domineering, cried I, but I didn't know that you wished to foster her fierce temper. I didn't know that to humour her. I should wink at Mr. Heathcliff. I perform the duty of a faithful servant in telling you, and I have got a faithful servant's wages. Well, it will teach me to be careful next time. Next time you may gather intelligence for yourself. The next time you bring a tale to me, you shall quit my service, Ellen Dean, he replied. You'd rather hear nothing about it, I suppose, then, Mr. Linton, said I. Heathcliff has your permission to come a-courting to Miss, and to drop in at every opportunity your absence offers, on purpose to poison the mistress against you. Confused as Catherine was, her wits were alert at applying our conversation. "Ah, Nelly has played traitor," she exclaimed passionately. "Nelly is my hidden enemy. You witch! So you do seek elf boats to hurt me. Let me go, and I'll make her howl a recantation." A maniac's fury kindled under her brows. She struggled desperately to disengage herself from Mr. Linton's arms. I felt no inclination to tarry the event, and resolving to seek medical aid on my own responsibility, I quitted the chamber. In passing the garden to reach the road at a place where a bridle hook is driven into the wall, I saw something white moved irregularly, evidently by another agent than the wind. Notwithstanding my hurry, I stayed to examine it, lest ever after I should have the conviction impressed on my imagination that it was a creature of the outer world. My surprise and perplexity were great on discovering, by touch more than vision, Miss Isabella Springer. Fanny, suspended by a handkerchief and nearly at its last gasp. I quickly released the animal and lifted it into the garden. I had seen it follow its mistress upstairs when she went to bed, and wondered much how it could have got out there, and what mischievous person treated it so. While untying the knot round the hook, it seemed to me that I repeatedly caught the beat of horses' feet galloping at some distance. But there were such a number of things to occupy my reflections that I hardly gave the circumstance a thought, though it was a strange sound in that place at 2:00 in the morning. Join me for the next video. Join me for the next video of Wuthering Heights. Join me for the next video of Wuthering Heights. Morel saying, see you then. Bye.